Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to flip the switch.
Yep.
There it is. Yep. Okay.
Put the clapper in front of your face. When you hit the clapper, you're on the air.
Welcome to the Western New York Peace Center Talking Peace. And we're very thrilled to be here at our usual space with Think Twice Radio in the home of the future, thanks to our producer, Richard Wicca. Thank you, Richard. And we are also grateful to our friends at WBNY, Buffalo's original alternative radio station, 91.3 FM out of Buff State. So thank you to Buff State and WBNY. And while I think of thankfulness, I also think of our Haudenosaunee friends and, you know, the way that Haudenosaunee and especially the Seneca will start every gathering with the first words to be spoken, which are those of thanksgiving, which are thankful for the people who make it all possible, as we were just doing, and the people who are there, for that love that brings us there, for Mother Earth, and for all the creatures, for all the plants and the trees and all the creatures of the creation, all the different elements of the creation, and of course of the Creator, and of the original instructions that if we can follow them, you know, we need to follow them so that life can continue on this creation. So we acknowledge, we appreciate, and then we remember too that we are on stolen Haudenosaunee land, and I think for all of us on Seneca land here in Buffalo. So anyway, so we acknowledge that, and we appreciate that, our indigenous friends, and hope and try to that we should take care of people on the planet. So we have a very special group here today, and a very special topic that Deidre helped me put together. And so we're going to talk about racism and resilience, Black history in Buffalo, in Western New York. So I'm very thrilled. As we go round, I'm going to say, well, first of all, like the Haudenosaunee do, go round counterclockwise. I'm first going to introduce Dianna Henderson, who is the president of the Bishop William H. Henderson Foundation, and his widow. And we're so grateful that you made time to come, Dianna, and for all your work. And Rachel, of course, his daughter, who's also the vice president, Rachel Henderson. Thank you, Ray, for coming.
Of course. Thank you for having us both. We are so happy to be here and to share with you all. Yes.
We're so glad you are here. And, of course, Deidre Email, the executive director at the Western New York Peace Center. Thank you, Deidre, for coming in and for helping.
Yeah.
Yes.
No problem. It's always good to talk history and to talk truth. So I'm excited about this topic.
Yes, and thank you for helping. We were trying to say how to sort of pick it as a topic. So thank you for all that, your wisdom in that. And of course, we have, I was just saying, our multimedia professional here, that Doug Ruffin, who is the originator of the Buffalo History Channel, that very Buffalo History Channel. So thank you so much for coming, Doug.
Thank you very much for having me. It's certainly a pleasure to be here as I get ready to wind down my stay here in the city of Buffalo.
Well, I was going to say, it's so wonderful that you're actually in Buffalo right now, and yet, you know, we could have done this from when you're, you know, where is it that you're? Is Baltimore, right?
I'm in Maryland.
Yeah, in Maryland. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we can get you another time too, because this is a big topic, and we won't cover it all today. But we're just so grateful. And I didn't mention, we'll get into it a little bit, but I want to mention specifically as far as the Bishop William H. Henderson Foundation, the Michigan Street Baptist Church, the wonderful heart of the Underground Railroad in Buffalo. And really I would even say of the Underground Railroad. Because here people were on the verge. They were right on the verge. So anyway, so on that note, we'll just go from there into, you know, we like to start off just sharing the values that we want to bring into the conversation, and especially into this topic of racism and resilience in our history and in locally. So if we just go around and each of you could just share some values that you think of in connection with this topic or conversation. So Dianna?
Yeah, well, the couple of things that we actually wrote down about this, and my mom was,
okay.
Yeah, we talked about having the awareness of the historical perspectives of Western New York and Buffalo and how they apply to our story today collectively in the city of Buffalo, and also as African-American peoples and as change makers. That was a big one. So that awareness on how to be proactive, to help in the community, to have the historical knowledge. And then also,
the other thing we talked about being the bridge builders. You know, when I look at the bishop and how he was able to stand against the odds when they wanted to tear down the church. This was back in 1974.
Wow.
And the bulldozer came and you know, I used to tell him, laugh at him and said, "You're a little nuts here." And he stood in front of the bulldozer and decreed and made a declaration that it was a historical site. He kept the Michigan, whatever you want to call it, the Underground Railroad, alive. All through the resilience of standing against the odds. Taking the integrity, taking the courage to make a stand when others weren't standing with him.
Yeah.
And to see the vision, how it's unfolding and continue to unfold, it's a great blessing in the community.
Yes.
So we talk about core values. He had integrity enough to stand against the odds and listen to this and to rise up through the ashes.
Right.
Wow. When others wanted to keep him quiet, make sure he was silent, he was not a man of silence. He had an empowered voice, and he used his voice for the sake of the vision, for the sake of the people. He understood his ancestors, the pain, the cries that they went through. Thank you for letting me share.
Wow, no, those are so powerful. So, I mean, I was just going to say, well, there's the awareness and the bridge building and the integrity. Oh, hallelujah, alhamdulillah for integrity. But then as you go in and hearing the cries of the people and that love for the people is so big, so huge. So thank you for all of those wonderful values. You want to add anything more before we go on? Rachel, did you have something more you wanted to?
Oh, no, this is, I think that's great. And also education. I think that ties into the awareness, being educational, I guess, pillars or people to come to where our community knows about their history. So, yeah.
Not just that. He was big on the children.
Right.
Making sure the children understood the history.
Yes.
He said, we have got to understand, we have to empower our kids so that you know their history.
Right.
You know the history, you kind of have a perspective about your destiny.
Right. So true. Just Sankofa. So thank you so much. So Deidre, what would you say for now?
I think the values I think about is courage, courage and compassion. Courage to even speak truth and to stand up on, whether it's ugly or whether it's, whatever, however it feels and looks, that we all are open to receiving, truth and to dealing with it. That's the only way to truly heal as a community and as people. But it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to speak up. It takes a lot of courage to keep going. And so you can't be a wimp in this thing.
No.
You really can't. And, it takes, loving support, from one another to have that courage. and compassion. And, compassion helps us to understand the other view, the other perspectives. Hopefully to help, people understand what our communities have gone through over centuries. So, different things haven't happened in a vacuum, but they are continuations of, DNA, genetics, systemic, it's continuations of, the festering sore, of greed and capitalism and racism. So, yeah.
Right. So those are so huge. Courage is so big, and actually back to, very connected, and the compassion to all the things that we were just thinking of. And so they each one interlocked with the other. And Doug, what would you say for some values that you want to uplift as we're starting this conversation?
The upliftment that I do through the Buffalo History Channel is just giving people giving a wide range of people an opportunity to tell a wide range of stories. It's basically built on storytelling. I built that platform because I wanted it to show a wide range of unique stories. So when you look on the YouTube channel, there's so many different stories from so many different people, and I try to when I did my first one on the Build organization, that was a series that combined so many different stories. So that's and being and working in the industry, working in media and working in the news stations and everything. Right. That's what we do. That's what we do on a day-to-day basis. We learn. They teach you how to tell different stories, and we compile different materials, which is one of the fun things about the History Channel, and that's what I've been doing throughout my visit here. It's just running around doing different interviews and having different stories told. For example, today did an interview with Herb Bellamy Jr. at the 1490. He told the story of his father, Herb Bellamy Sr., and 1490 Enterprises, as well as the Black Achievers. And we did the interview at the Black Achievers Museum. So Herb was telling 3 different stories. Yesterday, I did a story with Clifford Bell.
Oh, great!
The man is in his 90s. We did almost maybe a 90-minute interview. Oh, and he told his entire life, and it was amazing. We were going to focus. I was meaning to focus on his political career and the Martin Luther King Monument, Martin Luther King Park, and what else? And we went from there to talking about Bell Brothers Cleaners, the entrepreneurship in his family, and he even shared stories of some of the old school politicians from like Leland Jones and Cora P. Maloney, and people who were, some of the first Black men and Black women in city government, and how he knew all of them. So it's just a multitude of different stories. We found. I was talking with a gentleman. He introduced me to. He has this whole collection. There was a gentleman that used to take pictures in the city of Buffalo by the name of Ron Wooford. He was part of Sunship Communications, one of the first multimedia Black organizations in the city of Buffalo. And he went over an entire collection that he had, where they documented a number of things in the community. We're going through boxes and boxes of videotapes. Wow. And I have a reel-to-reel videotape, actually 2 of them. Wow. These are of Arthur Eves' mayoral campaign in the 70s. Wow. So I have a third one of the second annual Juneteenth on Jefferson Avenue from 1977. So we're getting those transferred. And another thing that we did on Sunday, we did a tribute. It was a kickoff to Juneteenth, but it was a closing of the art exhibit at the Birchfield Penny, which was a tribute to the Langston Hughes Institute. Right. And we had a tribute to a spoken word event back in the 90s called Wordism. And we had some of the poets from that era come out and do an entire presentation at the Birchfield Penny. And the video is posted on my Facebook page, by the way. Great. So really it's about It's about telling the story of a people and people being able to tell their truths and finding their power in storytelling.
Wow.
Wonderful.
Wow. That is amazing. Well, so many amazing stories that you've just touched on. So I hope people will go look and find those either on the Buffalo History Channel. You said on your Facebook page on the History Channel. Is it for the History Channel Facebook
it's
page
on
or
YouTube.
Doug Ruffin? Oh, it's on the YouTube. On the YouTube.
The actual platform is on YouTube.
Right.
Just go to YouTube, type in Buffalo History Channel, it comes right up.
Yeah, I've done that. So I thought you said the Facebook page, but maybe I was getting it mixed up.
I post a few things on, just a few advertisements on the Facebook page.
Sure. Well, there's so many great stories, and really that's what we're talking about when we wanted to do this show. And I want to say the Buffalo News just today did a story on the history of racism in Buffalo, and I felt like, well, good, because you know what happened right after the massacre is that everyone kept saying, well, he wasn't from here, though. And I know I was not the only one, but even I, who only moved here in 2007, right, is that people who were being interviewed, because, of course, it was crawling with reporters up and down Jefferson, they were asking people, and people were saying, don't think that it's something away from here. We have our own racism right here. Right. Mm-hmm. And I want to say both that history of racism and the history of that strong Black community and the wonder and the beauty of what people did with their resilience in Buffalo is just, so amazing. The history, the beginning of the Niagara movement and the NAACP, the Bishop Henderson's story and everything that you're telling. Maybe we'll get back into that of just saying, when we think about the history, I want to say, what we brought our Camp Peace Prince to the Michigan Street Baptist Church, and there's your dad, your husband, they're waiting for us on the steps. And did he ever thrill the hearts of these little young campers with the story and bringing them down into seeing where the people were hiding, the enslaved people, how they were hiding, and when we just did the Women's March, actually, we were right there at that point, on Broderick Park where the crossings, there were a lot of crossings. But anyway, if you want to, maybe if we talk a little bit about that history from that time and where the racism and resilience was first percolating, and we can go right round with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. When you talk about the racism starting from the time of the early 1800s here in Buffalo, New York, you had congregants of the Michigan Street Baptist Church who had been freedom seekers that had decided to reside in Buffalo. Mm-hmm. And at that time period, the only amount of land allocated to them was where we now call the East Side. So you have William Street, Broadway, Michigan, all the way down to the Fruit Belt. And from there, I believe that's where their resilience came into being, because at the church, when they bought that plot of land for $3,000 back in 1845, wow. that was no joke. That was a lot of money.
You're not kidding.
And the amount of unity that our people had to have in order to come together, buy the plot of land, continue to build this church with their own hands from the ground up, pastors, deacons, congregants, all manifesting this beautiful place that would serve as a place of refuge for the last mile for freedom seekers. That's deep, deep resilience. Even while they were hiding people in the church and they had bounty hunters coming through at that time. I mean, Buffalo had maybe a few known people that were helping these freedom seekers. Judge Ambrose, he was a judge who, when bounty hunters came to his courts seeking papers to recapture this free person, he would hold them off for hours. As for a bathroom break, a lunch break, he said, I'm going to take a bathroom break, and hours would go by. But guess what? The people at the Michigan Street Baptist Church knew the network was so strong. So for me, in experiencing this history with my father and now taking up, my own courageous task to continue talking about history and learning it for myself, I realized that it runs deep in us, resilience. I mean, unfortunately, we've had to suffer so many traumatic events, complex trauma, being African-American peoples in the diaspora and in Western New York. It's just, we needed a place of refuge, and the church was really one of those places from the ground up. Yeah.
Dianna, do you want to add anything to that?
I think Rachel was very clear.
Yes, she was. She certainly is. I'm just checking.
Historical. Yes. I call it boots on the ground. So she did.
So, and that's the thing. You know that history. You know it so well. It's just in your DNA and in your whole being. And Deidre?
Wow. All I can say is wow.
Yes, wow.
Like I said, I just enjoy listening, to more of our history. I think about like the mutual aid networks are not new, in our communities, and this is how our first cooperative insurance companies came along. This is how our first Black food co-ops in Buffalo came along. This is not, these are not new ideas. Black people in Buffalo have been supporting and building and connecting and strengthening one another since early 1800s, since they were able to get free. We've been a network of resilience. That's the only way we were going to survive. So I think we're made up of an interesting stock of people, us here. And like my family, my mother and her sister, my grandmother and her sister came up here from Brighton, Alabama, and out of a siblings of, I think, 5 or 7 or something like that. Only two young women, teens coming all the way up to the Northeast United States.
Wow.
So our generations here are from those 2 sisters, and how much we have to hold it down here, and connect from Buffalo to Cleveland. We're, that's our part of our history. Why did we come up here? How did we continue to survive here, in Buffalo? So I think it's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing to see and to hear the history. And I thank you, Doug, and, Rachel, Dianna, and Eva Doyle, and so many, others that really try to share and educate, just about the history, period. And people are amazed. Oh my gosh, why is it so sacred? It's a reason, and a lot of it has to do with economics. Like they said, I didn't even know that was the only space they would give, African Americans is the East Side. I knew of some of the, like some of the history of the Polish and the, Italians and so on.
Right.
But to understand how, we not only migrated here, we had our migration, right? After slavery, before that we had, escaped slaves. Before that, we had a whole nother slave network in New York City. We had a whole set of slavery, and selling of slaves in New York City.
Wow. And
people escaping farther north, from that, so you have so many, we have a rich and hard history here, but it's because we're here is what makes us resilient. We can't become resilient without going through a catalyst of events to build our genetic makeup to survive. Right. So genetic, physically, community-wise, and so on.
Right, right. That's why they're so interrelated. And Doug, what would you say?
For the resilience part, I would have to say I I started to learn about the resilience when I was starting to when I first started researching the history of Build. I mean, because growing up with it, didn't have a great deal of exposure to it because I was extremely young at that time, and I think before I learned about the resilience, I have to say, I would say that I've told people this, that I had to learn about race relations as opposed to really racism, because I was a student when I was first a student at the Build Academy over here on Clinton Street.
Right.
It was in all blacks. It was a mostly black school that was founded for Black inner city children, and I was there in kindergarten. And by the time I went to first grade, we went over on Fugeron Street, right around the corner from where the Juneteenth headquarters is now. That went over there. We had the whole magnet school program going on, and they were busing white children into the black community from all different parts of the city. Some came from the west side, others came from from the Seneca Babcock area. So we had to really. I mean, I think it more as I researched it more and started doing stuff with the Build alumni. I started to realize for us, we were very young. It didn't really impact on us as much because we were all friends with each other. But when but I realized later on that it was different for some of the kids who were older, because not everybody really wanted to be bust into the community. I mean, when you look at the situation how it was in Boston, Massachusetts around that same time, right, it was extremely intense. We didn't really, I don't believe we had that type of intensity here at that time. I don't think we did, but it was just kind of the other way around. But the resilience part of it, I learned about it through the research, because when they came together to organize that, I mean, it was a case where the community was really required and challenged to have to really close ranks and come together to form this organization, and then work together to make different inroads in terms of just like establishing an effort called the Build Academy, creating jobs for blacks through the affirmative action program, and training people to have work skills in the skills assessment center, and just things like that. So that it forced people to have that. People will always say that we came together during that time because we didn't have a choice, So I think the resilience part is where that was the biggest fight against racism, was just simply trying to close ranks as a community to build within your community.
Right.
So I wonder, and I know, first of all, I said this on my own, and then meanwhile, I've heard people saying it, not from me, but just time after time. Well, City of Good Neighbors, and when they said, oh, well, this tragedy, massacre, but we're the City of Good Neighbors, so there's no problem. And then I thought, yeah, City of Good Neighbors, sixth most segregated city in the country. So who are your neighbors? Who are these? Why are they good neighbors? Oh, could it be because your white neighbors in your white community or your black neighbors in your black community, because we are the sixth most segregated city in the country? So it's deceptive. And so that was why I was glad, as far as truth telling, when people said time after time on these interviews that they were getting, don't buy it when the politicians are up there saying, oh, City of Good Neighbors, no problem here. No, there's a problem.
City.
Yeah, all American city. And, I like them a little better, City of No Illusions. Let's call it that. That's what they also call. But so when we look at that, and, it looked to me, when we think, first of all, I want to say I have learned over the years of just and painfully, how deep racism goes. I mean, I've gotten on WBNN ranting about how I'm a racist, right? Right after during the summer of 2020, because I just, I'm realizing nobody is immune. We can think we don't, we're not affected and that's not me, or no, all of us are affected because it's in the air we breathe. It's in the reality that we see. It's in the news that is presented and mispresented to us, right? And so I feel like that really, racism and resilience in Buffalo, especially because first, I want to say, somebody, I had read that we have the second most number of arrests of any county in the country. We're number 2 in arrests for January 6th insurrection at the Capitol, right? So there's a lot of, now I just read something where it said we were a little less than that. And maybe that's been a moving, that's been changing as the numbers go or as people get arrested or something. But there's certainly a lot of racism around here. We know we have hate groups. I just read this. There's hate groups and racist groups, in Buffalo, and surrounding. So there's at least 3 in Buffalo and the surrounding suburbs. And, we've seen where a racist literature has been passed out in Grand Island and in Hamburg, and there was the white flight and all of that. So I want to say about the chicken and the egg, about the resilience and the fact that Buffalo has like the second or third biggest Juneteenth in the country, same with Kwanzaa and all of that, and the birth of the Niagara movement. How would you relate those to that? And do they feed each other in funny kind of a way, or what would you say?
Yeah, just thinking about the birth of the Niagara Freedom Movement, they would not have had to fight for that if they weren't having to secure freedom for themselves, right?
Right.
Even Mary B. Talbert's involvement, even having W.E.B. Du Bois come to her house and formulate the stepping stones to the NAACP. I mean, if we hadn't had all of this to fight for, we would not have been able to build such foundational communities for ourselves in that way. But it's still very unfortunate that we've had to suffer through this systemic racism. 2020 really broke it down for a lot of us while we were stuck at home and had nothing to do but be on social media and really ask ourselves, what are we fighting for in the 21st century? So it correlates deeply, but it's so sad from my perspective to see that it hasn't changed a lot. Like, we're still fighting for the same things, the same freedoms, the same human values, to be seen as somebody. I think that's like one of the things to see African-American people as people, number one. And I think the city of Buffalo, New York, has a lot of work to do with that. Even our refugee people, even people who are immigrants to the city of Buffalo, now we're thinking about their stories that they're telling. And it's funny, it's all connected, but I guess we ask ourselves the question, how do we repair history so that we don't have to keep repeating the same things over and over again? And
I was just thinking, as Rachel was sharing, one of the things, we have to have real conversation.
Yes.
When we talk about my neighbor, who is my neighbor? What does it mean to me? What does it look like? We are diverse, but yet we could be unified.
Right.
We have maybe some of the same core values. But maybe a different texture of skin. Am I really willing to step in a new dimension of reality and have a real conversation, and to feel your pain and you feel my pain?
Yes.
To feel my trauma, and I know you're going through trauma.
Absolutely.
That's right.
I think it really does begin with having a real conversation. Not political, but real, deep into the heart, where we can really talk about how can we be agents of change, or bridge builders in our community.
Right.
And across the board.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So true.
So true.
So important. Deidre?
And you know, it's interesting, Vicki, was you read about how many so-called organized hate groups, are in the area. But I would say, and if y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I can say in our conversations with me growing up in Buffalo, that was just known that you didn't go to certain places
Right.
in Buffalo or even in the suburbs because you knew, even though it's not in front of you, there are nuances of racism that a lot of Black people, at least in Buffalo or in the North, know about.
Right.
But we know that they exist. We may not know their names, we may not know, but we know, at least when I was growing up, was certain areas of Buffalo, South Buffalo and so on, that we didn't go.
Right.
Unless you was with a group.
Right.
And even if you went with a group, they'll probably ask you, why are you here?
Right.
Okay. And so you was trying to pass through as fast as possible, if you didn't have no real business there. And that's the same for today. And they may not be in South Buffalo now. Maybe it's farther out into suburbs. We go out there now and we'll say, you know what, how many faces looked over and looked at us strange.
Right.
Or we can count how many Black people we see in the store and how did they get here?
Yeah.
We wondering, are they safe? Are they okay? So that's happening today. Right. That was yesterday. Right. That's going to Walmart out in Hamburg.
Right.
So that's our reality in our conversation, in the regular conversation, just regular conversation. Because we just know how to, we see the nuances. It's not always right in your face how it was, a couple of weeks ago. That's right in your face, but we always knew it existed.
Right.
So you read about it. We feel it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. We feel it when we take care of our business, when our doctor's appointments are out in Orchard Park and who knows land, and our men have to go in construction. They have to go to Gowanda. And people are wondering what this Black man doing out here in Gowanda. Okay, where they don't have no safety. Okay, they out there alone. Hopefully they have some allies. But you understand. So this is our reality and our truth.
Right.
That when we go out there, we're not seeing another Black face. So how do we feel? We know we go into Trump country. Yeah, I know what that looks like.
Oh yeah.
We see certain things outside the houses, and we say, "Oh, okay, we know where we at. Hurry up and drive."
Right.
Let's don't go to the gas station here.
Right.
So it's certain things that we do to protect ourselves. But it's interesting. Not that you had to read about it, but for you to get a sense of it, you have to read about it. But this is something that we feel and that we see that exists already.
Right. Right.
Can I just share this one little thing? I'm not from Buffalo, but I'm a BuffaloWNY. Over 40 years, yes, I'm a BuffaloWNY. I grew up in New Jersey. Let me just say about this one block I grew up on. It was quite diverse. I was a little kid. All right. We had Native Americans, we had whites, we had Hispanics, we had Jews, and it was a variety. My best girlfriend was Jewish. And so one day she invited me to her birthday party. I got all dolled up, a little girl, didn't know no difference. I went to the step of her home, and her mother said to me, "What is she doing here? She is not welcome here." Now, let me tell you what my reaction was. I could have been bitter or better, but I choose to be better. I could have loved or I could have hated her. But you know what? I loved her even more. We continue loving each other. So how do we bridge that gap? And it's still happening today.
Right.
That's right.
Those experiences could have toppled me over as a little kid, but there was a resilience in me that I didn't know I had to be a change agent, to make a difference.
Right. That loving heart.
And so I've learned to embrace it and to pass it on. Use my voice as a positive, empowered voice to make a difference. Then I ran for the Senate seat in Buffalo. Then I worked for the congressman. I was in the military. All of these things. I've learned to be a bridge builder. So I just wanted to share that piece because it is.
Please. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to, what you said, Mrs. Henderson, about those candid conversations.
Yeah.
That we must have, like I've been blessed to have some of those conversations with people that, I have become friends with.
Yes.
But, we had it probably straight on, let's just be candid with each other.
Right.
I thought you was a Karen when I met you. Oh, I thought you, was such and such when I met you. Oh, okay. Well, why did we think that way about each other? Well, I thought you was, you was the queen of such and such. And then, you was trying to control everything. Well, what was that? Did I say something? Oh, no, at the African rap. Well, why is it that you feel that way? Why did you feel, this and that? What do you think when you see me or I see you? And how do we break down those barriers? She's a great friend to this day, but we can still talk candidly. Yes. And I might say, oh, girl, that was a little bit Karen. That was a little Karen of you, but we may make a joke, and she's like, you think so for real? And then, she kind of, readjusts and say, okay, well, how am I approaching, different people? And she has to work with, a good, a low income, people, are you talking to them with decency? Are you talking down to them? Oh, that was a little mean. Well, like, why did you do that? Well, because people, these are people too. So, but we can continue if people are open and honest about, just honest about where they are.
Right.
And honest about what they hear coming from how we may feel or how it's going to come across to us. Then real change can happen, and vice versa. Vice versa, because that's that compassion I'm talking about. Yes. It's like the listening.
Yes.
And acceptance.
Right.
So and talking about education, our children have to be educated, but every color, every ethnicity needs to be educated.
Absolutely.
About their history, where they live at, the history between, it's so many Caucasian children, that don't know their history, real history. They have been bamboozled and starved out also. So they have been miseducated.
Yes.
Right.
And that's why they continue to perpetuate the same system. Right. They've been miseducated. We got to educate them. We really do.
I was going to also say, I agree with Dianna. The conversation is definitely needed. I mean, I'm in a position now where I'm looking at it from a different vantage point because I no longer live in Buffalo. And, I have sat and watched for the past now 1, 2, 3 years now that Buffalo the eyes of the world has been on Buffalo. Buffalo is on the national stage with a myriad of issues going back to 2020 with the civil unrest.
Right.
Yeah.
This year with the mass shooting. And even last year with the mayoral campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
That was another.
Oh, tell it.
I mean, I'm out here in the DMV. I'm out on my job with coworkers. I have coworkers asking me all the time.
You do. I know you do. Oh, yes.
So I have had to have conversations out there about everything that's been going on in Buffalo. So it's a lot of these 3 years have really caused Buffalo to really take a look, basically look in the mirror at its own self.
Right.
Yeah.
And acknowledge some of that now your issues are no longer being seen within the city, but now it's being seen not even by the country, but by the world now.
Right.
Because these issues have extended far beyond the Western New York region. So the conversation is definitely needed.
Right. Well, when Cornel West came to our annual event, and he talked about the history of Buffalo, it was a lot of that sort of back to the racism and resilience. There's a lot of resilience that has come. There's a lot of strength, but the trauma is deep, and the effects are real, because we know with the extreme segregation and with the poverty, that we're one of the poorest cities, that we're the fourth poorest nationally, and our children were the second poorest in terms of child poverty. And so, and that again is back to that racism that goes deep into the economic system, deep into the social system, deep into the everyday. And of course, back to, I don't know the way you know, but I know because people have said to me, do you think that a black person is just going to come walking in a door if you tell them that they can walk in a door? People are, and what to speak of the policing. Back to Crystal Peoples-Stokes, this was in the Challenger, when Crystal Peoples-Stokes was talking about, people were talking about the way the murderer was arrested at Tops. And she said, I just paraphrasing, she said, I talked to my nephew, I think it was, about what he thought about that. And he said, when I've been stopped for a traffic stop and I've been thrown up against stuff or thrown out, whether it was on the car or the ground, I can't remember, then I'm thrown up and violently. And this guy was arrested like he had just stolen a loaf of bread. Cannot stand. That's where the honest conversations have to come in. That is not, that's not unique to here. That's been time after time with these mass murderers. If they're white, they've been gently somehow they don't have a scratch on them. Somehow they manage to arrest them without any damage done. Whereas the other unarmed black people, we know, for police killings, police shootings, there's two main categories: white men with a gun, armed, and black men unarmed.
Yeah.
And women too are in there.
Yeah.
So we're talking about how, if we can talk about current needs, maybe join up these two pieces, current needs and how people can get more involved. If we could go round on that a little bit.
Yeah, that's, from our sector of history over here in Buffalo and Western New York, we need help with operational costs to keep these venues or these monuments of history alive. I know for me, I also serve as the vice president on the Buffalo-Niagara Freedom Station Coalition, which are the current owners for the Michigan Street Baptist Church. And thank God we're finally going through our last and biggest renovation, hopefully, fingers crossed, that is going to kind of complete our community anchor, I guess you can say, so to speak. But we still need, help covering the operational costs to keep the lights on, to keep our building insured under construction. And in my position, one way to help is to volunteer your time and your resources, whether that be money or connecting to other funds. I think that for history makers right now, we need that in order to keep the history alive.
So how can people donate to you for that?
For people to donate to the church, I would suggest that they Google the Michigan Street Baptist Church and go to our website, and you will find there on the website a way to donate. And I mean, the gratitude is just unending for the community support that we've received over 50 plus years since my dad has owned the church in 1974. But I mean, he had to fight tooth and nail, through a myriad of health issues and battling cancer and repairing the actual roof of the church himself. Wow. I mean, that was just a task to undergo while, you know, going through health issues. But it's because we knew that the task was something that needed to be done and it needs to be preserved. So please Google the Michigan Street Baptist Church. Come and visit us over the next fall season before it gets too cold, because guess what? Like you said, Deidre, we have to educate all people. And that note hits so hard because my mom and I can both attest to many Caucasian people coming into the church and not even knowing that this existed where it is now. So for us not to be enlightened to the different sectors of African-American history here in Buffalo, if you're coming from South Buffalo, or if you're coming from, you know, the Polish background, it's an injustice because it's all of our history. That's
exactly. Exactly.
Like it's the human history. So we need to start supporting each other and have those real conversations, like my mom said, those candid moments where you can be like, well, what was your stereotype of me? And what did I think about you? Like you said, Miss Deidre, it's so important. So one way to help, donate to the places that keep history alive, like the Michigan Street Baptist Church. Come and have those real conversations and get to know each other on a human-to-human basis.
Right. So beautiful. So important.
Yes.
Very big way.
I love that.
Deidre?
Yeah, just I think you know, people say that we need certain things in the Black community, and we need certain initiatives and so on. And it's not that we necessarily need them. They exist. They do need financial support. So, you know, it's good, you know, that people promote and they, you know, we, you know, go on shows or you know, radio, what have you, and, you know, hey, this is what we need. But you know what? These initiatives, whether it's food, whether it's, you know, providing for ourselves, purchasing of our own land or having access to it, we need that support. We need, you know, more grassroots support, financial support. People have money, foundations, you know, support. There's people that, you know, that they have a little bit of money and they want to know where to give it, you know, where can they help and, you know, help these initiatives grow so that we can provide for our own. You know, now our monies are going worldwide. Globalization, you know, has taken place. But you know what? Our community was built because our money stayed within the community. You know?
Right.
Our monies are everywhere now, you know, because we're trying to find the cheapest, you know, we're trying to survive. So, you know, we're trying to, you know, just live. But now those monies need to come back, you know, into the local community.
Right.
So that and support ourselves.
Right.
So.
Well, you didn't mention the Western New York Peace Center, but I would say I'll mention it as board chair. I think I'm obligated to mention that you didn't. WNYPeace.org, because, you know, people think the Western New York Peace Center is this big, huge organization, because I think sometimes I say small but mighty. I just found out, I thought we were 50 hours of paid staff time. We're at 40 hours of paid staff time. And yet people think, they say, oh, we've seen the Western New York Peace Center. It's that white building on the lake there, right? It's like, no. No, that's the Buffalo. That's the Albright Knox, you know. That's the Buffalo History Museum or something.
Right.
Anyway, and so many initiatives, as you said. You know, certainly there are all kinds of initiatives, and some of them, as you said, they're small GoFundMes, and lots of them are great, you know, community organizations that are doing so much. So, and Doug, to you, what would you say that you'd like to see for current needs and what you see how people can help?
think they're probably off to a good start right now from what I'm seeing. Just they're starting to form, people getting more involved in the community, other people, other organizations starting to form coalitions with one another and pool resources like what they've been doing on Jefferson. I think they're off to a good start with that if they can find ways to keep that going and not after the cameras and everything leave.
Right.
That's
Also Deidre mentioned it as well. Keep the money within the community.
Right.
That's basically where it lies. It's just a matter of seeing if people can maintain it after all of the hysteria is gone.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So supporting Black-owned businesses for one, and keeping the money in local small businesses and especially Black-owned businesses. I know I saw that. Yeah, that is so important and such a big thing for people to do, and anybody and everybody can do it. Fill up your card there. Now, as far as the grocery store, now that's a whole nother topic. That'll be a whole nother radio show. We'll get to that another day. But anyway, I want to say, when we opened with a little Ganono, so I like that the indigenous people, the Haudenosaunee, end it with, they say Nyahweh. And, it's sort of like thank you, but it's more like really that it is the praise to the Creator for what we have, this beautiful world that we have here, that we can make it, and keep it as originally instructed so that life can continue. So when the person says Nyahweh, then the people say no. So Nyahweh.
No.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much. This has been so great and definitely to be continued, because there's a lot more history than that we need to share and learn and offer to people for that re-education and that connection and that frank conversations. So we can't thank you enough for coming on. This is Talking Peace, and together we've been talking peace in truth and love. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
That was a great show. I knew you wouldn't leave. I knew Deidre wouldn't leave with all your great people.
I'm glad you stayed on.
Of course she did. Of course she did.